And we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Great, I'll turn it over to you, Madam Clerk, for the roll call.
Commissioner Escobedo,
Present.
Commissioner Smith,
Present.
Chair Gonzalez,
Present.
and Vice Chair Manfredi and Commissioner Zunino are absent today.
Oh, Commissioner Susino just walked in.
And as soon as it warms up, your screen will come on. Then Commissioner Zunino is here.
Present.
Present. Thank you so much.
Great, so it looks like we'll open up the floor to public comment. Is there,
We have no attendees in the room and no attendees via Zoom.
great. So with that, then I guess we'll go over to new business. And I think the next thing is the minutes. So I believe that this is just a motion to pass and approve the minutes. But I believe I have to open that up to public comment.
Yeah, and with no attendees on Zoom and no attendees in the room, we can just proceed to the motion.
Great. Does anyone want to move to approve the minutes from last meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the, I don't know. the
Last
date.
meeting.
Last meeting.
Yeah, it's fine.
I don't have the date.
Anyone want a second?
Oh, yeah.
I'll second it.
Yep. Yeah, no, I got it. They're in the closet.
Well, that one, we're okay, right?
Yeah, right there. They're in the closet behind the little fire extinguisher sign. And just any of the ones with the, yeah, you got it. So go ahead and vote on that. And absent. And that motion carries. Thank you so much.
Great. So the next item up is the Police Department Wellness Program. Are you going to introduce that?
I will kick us off on that. Yes, Chair. It's my pleasure and honor to be able to introduce to all of you for this item, Sergeant Tracy Trapini, as she makes her way up there. As a reminder, this item was put on the agenda by me, and I think at least 2 commissioners said they would have requested it had I not put it on there. So that's it for my introduction. Take it away, Sergeant Trapini.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tracy Trupini, and I'm the supervisor of the wellness program. And before I begin, I want to start by saying this program would have never happened without Chief Stevenson and his foresight in building this program for his people. So thank you, Chief.
Oh, just make sure it's on. It might not be on this side. There's the power. Yeah, thank you.
Alrighty, so I'm going to start by first kind of giving you an idea of what the law enforcement workload looks like. Our positions are 24/7, and this includes our detectives, our community service officers, our dispatchers, and of course, our frontline supervisors and officers. We wear many hats in this department, and what I mean by that is we are covering planned and unplanned events. So 4th of July, New Year's Eve, those are planned events, right? So we know we're gonna have that influx of people coming into town. Unplanned events, how many of you were here for Caldor Fire? So that was a huge deal. And some of us live in town, so I evacuated with my family, but I also worked however many days that was. We fill in overtime shifts. We have court on our days off. We have detectives who maybe they're assigned a caseload and they have a set amount of hours. Some of them are assigned to our tactical unit. So not only are they on call and they carry a caseload, but when there's a critical incident, they can be summoned back to work at any time to respond with the tactical team to address that threat. These hours and overtime builds up and it creates layers of stress. And we call this acute stress. Impacts of acute stress. Some of the signs or red flags that may pop up. You might have someone who was previously, maybe they were super proactive, an officer, for example. Maybe he or she was, going out making a lot of car stops and engaging with the community, starting cops projects, reaching out to business owners, engaging with their peers, and then all of a sudden they become isolated. That's a red flag. Other issues could be substance abuse. Maybe they start drinking alcohol more. They're taking prescription drugs. They're trying to medicate that layer of stress or acute stress that's been building up over time. They might leave their employer early. They might retire out prematurely, so they're not going their full career. They might search for a different job somewhere else that's completely unrelated to what they were doing, or they might look for just another agency to start working for. And unfortunately, worst case scenario, death and suicide. Our people are our greatest asset. The South Lake Tahoe Police Department decided that we needed to do something, and we built a program based on 3 different categories: our peer support team, our mind-based wellness app, and our contract and our relationship with PT Revolution. And I'll get into each of those categories in the next couple of slides. Okay, so in 2022, Chief Stevenson sent out an email to all staff and asking who is interested in being part of this peer support program. And we immediately had 10 people respond who had a passion for peer support and officer wellness. Before that, we had the typical human resources file that you get when you're hired. It covers the employee assistance program, personal resources, and maybe insurance plans and stuff like that. Well, with this, we had now 10 volunteers who are passionate about this. How can we make and take care of our employees? So we sent those 10 volunteers to a post-certified training to certify them in peer support wellness. Some of us also attended the IACP, which is the International Association Chiefs of Police Conference or Symposium in Southern California. That symposium it's comprised of outside agencies throughout the region, and it's great because we can network and we can see what things are happening in other agencies and what's working and what's not. In 2023, we signed a 3-year contract with an app called Mindbase, and this is applied for or applicable for fire and police, as well as our family members. And it's a very simple application. It's an app that anyone can download on their phone. It's very user-friendly, and it's basically the employee can privately look through those resources and see what they need from their car or from the comforts of their home. Just to give you an idea, this is a screenshot of what the app looks like. So the screen on the left side of the slide here is exactly what they see when they tap that app open on their phone. And if they scroll up, there are several different icons they can click on. The personalized care is what you see on the right side of that slide. It's Health Advocate. That's your basic EAP outreach. So that's the 24/7 crisis line and a link to their website. And lastly, our contract with PT Revolution. In 2022, the fire department signed a contract or started a pilot program with PT Revolution, and basically this was a guide for the different things that PT Revolution could provide. So we were talking about nutrition guidance, mental health services, physical fitness training, and many other things, physical therapy for work-related and non-work-related injuries. And the whole goal was to make sure that our employees are very fit and healthy, living an active lifestyle, so that they can quickly recover from whatever injuries or whatever things that they're struggling through and successfully get back out into the field. The pilot program was a success, thankfully, and a year later, in 2023, City Council signed a $100,000 budget for per year for the extent of 5 years to continue those services. So basically, that funding will help officers and city employees have access to that all those resources with whatever that they may need. In conclusion, our ultimate goal is to make sure that we're providing our employees with the help that they need so that they can live a long, healthy life through retirement and not retire early, and that they're healthy enough to where they can give good customer service to our community, because everyone deserves that. Thank you for your time. And at this point, I can take any questions that you might have.
Great. Does anyone want to start with questions? Go ahead.
No questions, just a really thank you, right, for the leadership and the opportunity, right, for people here. Maybe one question. Could you talk just a little bit about what that looks like when someone walks through the door there to PT Revolution? What all is kind of there? And then on the other side, the mental health, what has that kind of turned into at this point?
Sure. So your first question, what happens when you walk into PT Revolution? So I'll use myself as an example. I had been on the same fitness program and nutrition for decades, and I was ready for a change because I felt like I wasn't performing to my maximum capabilities. So I went in, I met with a nutritionist. The nutritionist she is actually a nutritionist for the San Francisco Giants. So all of the team, all of the physical therapists, the nutritionists, everyone has an extensive history and education, and they are professionals. I've had to go in, I've had to use physical therapy. So, they were able to get me back. I recovered much quicker, and they stay on it. So they hold you accountable. You can't miss your next appointment. So if you walk out the door and you don't schedule your next appointment with them, they're calling you up. And they're very personable. When you walk in the door, they call you by your first name. How nice is that? It's like one big family there. So it almost makes you want to go back because, I'm going to see Jason, or I'm going to see, whoever. Your second part of the question was, remind me again?
Just on the mental health support there, what has that been like so far in the feedback you've gotten?
So with the mental health, that's mostly private information. So part of this app, the Mindbase app, is it allows people to be vulnerable and just with their family members, and they can access a lot of that. Some people just needed just a quick reference of, who do I call? What do I do? What are the steps? And instead of having that awkward conversation with a peer or HR, it's very easy for them to rely and fall back on that app with a lot of the resources that are listed on there.
Tracy, can I add something to that?
Of course.
Specifically when it comes to PT Revolution, if that's what you were asking about, because she mentioned there's mental health services there as well. They have one counselor, MFF, marriage, child, family. I always forget the acronym. But it's one licensed counselor, and we can make appointments directly with that person. So that's the services provided through PT Revolution. There is a limit on it. I forget what it is, 6 or something like that, but it's completely 5, but it's completely free.
6, but you can give that.
Yeah. So typically if someone's receiving services and they ask for more, they get them. It's been very easy to use. And the word that I think Sergeant Trapini was looking for is confidentiality is extremely important in all of this. Every training we've been to, every talk we go to, it's trust and confidentiality with the system that you have in place. So really relied upon our crew. The app has systems in place where me as the chief, I don't see any names that are involved. I don't have any idea who went and got services, and I don't want to know. There are reports that will show how many people have accessed the app, but it's kept the information itself is very sterile. So that's another aspect I think is really important for the program and for our peer support team. There's horror stories in some jurisdictions where departments or agencies or cities who've lost that trust with a peer support team. That becomes ineffective in a hurry. So anyway, I just wanted to add that about PT Revolution. So
Excellent. Well, just compliment your approach, your whole person approach to supporting your people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I definitely want to reiterate that it's fantastic that you have a very holistic approach. My background is a lot in trying to help officer wellness as a nurse practitioner, and having a holistic approach is the exact way to do it, of your physical health, nutrition, mental health, wellness, and that peer support aspect. You guys are doing a phenomenal job, so I'm really happy with your presentation and the work that you've done in this department. A question to add on, when you say you have about 5 or 6 sessions for mental health, does that tie into the program as a whole where it's just for mental health, or does that extend into the nutrition and actual PT appointments? Do you have additional ones throughout the
It's
year?
all separate.
Okay, perfect. How many sessions do you guys usually have for the physical therapy side of things?
For physical therapy, I want to say it's also 6 sessions or so, 5 or 6 sessions, I'm not sure.
I should have said bring the menu, I forgot. The menu, it would say on there, but I forgot it, sorry. We actually have a menu of services, and it articulates all that, and I completely forgot to bring it, but we can get you that information later for exact clarity on all that.
No worries. It sounds excellent.
Thank you.
I wrote a few questions.
Perfect, I love it.
The first is, how do you as a department keep each other accountable? I know you have the peer support group, but do you ever all notice officers who maybe aren't taking advantage of the program and seeing them struggle? How do you help them get on board with this program?
Sometimes so a big thing, and what we kind of learned at the symposium is that you actually don't need to be labeled as a peer support member to provide peer support. A lot of these red flags that we see are primarily noticed by someone's partner that they work with, because in our patrol beats, when we're working, you're married up with pretty much the same person on your shifts. So that person should become very familiar to your regular cadence of things. It is part of being a good peer and being a friend to have the courage to pull their partner aside and say, hey, what's going on with you? That's just being human and being able to hear them out. And chances are they're going to be more open with their partner because they're going to be more comfortable with him or her that they work with every day compared to, say, someone who is on the peer support team that they never see. However, if there are people who come to me and say, hey, I've noticed this and that, I haven't approached him or her on this, what do you think? And so I will seek out someone that maybe is close to that person and will assign a peer support member to check up on them to see what sort of what resources that they need.
Thank you. I guess the next one I had is the peer support officers, that group, are they at different levels of like the hierarchy or
Absolutely. Yes, I'm glad you asked that. I should have specified that in the PowerPoint. But yeah, so we have civilian staff, we have non-sworn, we have a supervisor, we have field training officers. So it was the email was sent out to all staff. So sworn, non-sworn. We have a couple of one of our CSOs who in fact is just finishing up the police academy right now. He approached me and said, hey, I really want to get into this program. I think it's really cool that you guys are doing this. And so, we recruited him as well. So it's across the board, we are finding that it's nice having those entities. Like we have a dispatcher who is part of the wellness program. So they're kind of oversight on the environment and the workload and stuff in there. A field training officer can kind of get a better idea. They're out in the field and they're exposed to a lot of different officers. And so they have an idea of the regular cadence and how people are responding to calls and making sure that they're giving that good customer service in a healthy way and living a healthy life, if that makes sense.
No, that's definitely, it's definitely cool to hear that it's at different levels. Then the other thing, and Chief, this might be a question for you too. I know this program is fairly new. Have you all seen a difference since the implementation of the program in your department? And then how have you all been able to discuss the changes and the positive changes, if there are, with other departments as like a comparison?
Do you want to start? So I have regional meetings. So I meet with for El Dorado County has a peer support team. We have chaplains. We have a probation peer support team, and they host regional meetings quarterly, and so we network with them to see what's going on with them. And we're in a WhatsApp group chat where if some critical incident happens with their agency, they might lean on us to help them out through that that program or whatever is happening with them. And I think the same thing would happen here because we're such a small community and small department that if something really bad happened, we may have to pull in other resources or other peer support teams to help us out, including chaplains. However, we recently sent out one of those monkey surveys just to kind of gauge what people appreciate or maybe what they want to see more of. And there was a high or a significant number of people who voted wanting more guest speakers. So now we're pulling in, or we've been reaching out with guest speakers, doctors and psychologists that could come in and maybe do some training for us probably over the summer.
Oh, she got it. Internally, you asked about successes internally, and are we measuring that? There are ways, the peer support team can track what they're doing in the back of house of the app, for lack of a better phrase. Part they can only access, so they can track. I wouldn't say it's successes, but it's hard to track it's hard to quantify what you prevented from happening sometimes. But I'm very proud of the team because I know that they've done outreach. I've heard anecdotally, without names and things, that they went and contacted somebody, that is occurring. So that's a success as far as I'm concerned. Ultimately, and we're understating about how much information is in the app. I mean, everything is in there. There's a million different resources, not just the one number. All of our healthcare information's all in one spot. There's stories. There's all the peer support team contacts are in there. I could show you offline, but I didn't want to drive Miss City Clerk crazy and put a live web page up on the screen during the presentation because she doesn't like it. So we can show you more of that later. But so I think it is absolutely working. She's in charge of the team, and at some point they'll go back and look and try to quantify. I've been letting it kind of go for, a bit, get up and running. So, but it does monitor that stuff.
Are you seeing like overall morale improvements? I mean, it's been 2 years? 2 years since the implementation of this program? Did I see the start date? I might have missed the start date.
Yeah, approximately 2 years.
Yeah.
I think people appreciate the fact that we're doing our best to provide outreach and resources for the officers and employees who have used the program appreciate it and they understand the totality of everything. So I do think for the long term, I think it's going to have much more significant impacts on morale. But it seems like it is positively impacting morale.
Great. I have one last question for you. And that is, it's kind of a combo question. Like, are there plans to renew the contract? And then if so, is that something you need, or do you need us to go to council to make recommendations also on your behalf?
Right, so the PT Revolution contract could be coming to a close or renegotiated, as well as the Mindbase app. And before we get to re-upping our contract with Mindbase app, we have to look into seeing if people are truly using that app. Another resource might be to just send out a newsletter, but I do like the idea of having the app, and I think majority of officers like having the app on their phone in the event that they do need it. Part of the other sections of that app includes a biography on each wellness member, and it's to allow our coworkers to get to know us, our human side, because we wear the shield and these stiff uniforms, but we live a different life when we're off work. We're moms and dads and dog moms, so we have another life outside of this job. And sometimes when people read that, it helps them relate and it helps us build rapport with them, and they can learn about our history and what brought us to law enforcement.
And I would say that soon-to-be Chief Robertson absolutely may use your assistance when those contracts do come up in 2026. I think both of them are coming up in 2026, the Mindbase app. And I've told them before, we expect enrollment to go kind of peak real fast when we first launch the app, and then we know that it's going to go down. That's what everyone reports. But my thing with that app is it's such a private connection, and people are so used to their phones. And I've told Tracy that if over the next 10 years, if one person uses it at 2 a.m. and and it prevents a crisis that we never knew, then it was worth every single penny. So, the amount we pay for it is chump change compared to a tragedy, that would to occur. So we expect the usage to be a little bit low after the launch, but yeah, it's also a conduit that I think this generation, the last couple generations have grown accustomed to. They rely on it, they have it, they always have it with them, and yeah, so I'll just leave it at that.
With regards to longevity of the program, besides looking at whether or not it's increasing morale, is there any direction that you're seeing on whether it's increasing the interest of officers in actually wanting to be part of the wellness teams or the crisis intervention stress management teams?
I've noticed just the interest when I talk to people out on calls. I've been, like I mentioned earlier, the community service officer who was really interested in joining. I ran into him out in the field when we were working, and he was expressing his passion for wellness and being part of the peer support program. So a lot of it's just kind of word of mouth, and I think they appreciate the team in itself and how well we work together. So it's kind of just how we shine as a group, other than just the usage of the app.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the questions.
Thank you.
I think I have to open it up for public comment, but there's no one in attendance. Anyone on Zoom yet?
There are no members on Zoom and no members in the audience.
And great. And technically, this is our time to discuss. Is there anything we want to say about this, or anything we want to report to council on this?
Sure. Just to echo, really appreciate the intent behind it, the vision, most definitely. You have no doubt in my mind difficult jobs. And so any and all support that we can provide, and whatever that looks like, hey, got to get behind. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yes, and I think the direction that your department is going and trying to maintain this and keep this is perfect. As far as adding more guest speakers, I think that's excellent as well. That way you get a lot of different community members involved and you have more of a growing interest. As far as longevity, from what I've seen working with different departments, is when people leave, sometimes programs wax and wane, which is the natural course of things like this. So the more team members you can include, even if it's throughout different ranks or just at the basic level, that helps keep the program running. So good luck with that, and I think you guys are going to do well with it.
So then are you all comfortable in the next report, which I have to definitely make this time, just saying that we have continued support for this program? Oh. Great. I think that we can move on to the next item. Thank you so much, Sergeant. Looks like next is use of force presentation.
Yep. Chair, it's my honor to be able to introduce to you Sergeant Russell Lyles, who will be presenting on this today.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon, board members. So to segue from mental wellness to uses of force, they're actually connected. If you have mentally well officers, you're going to have a reduction in uses of force. So I'm going to talk to you guys about data from May of 2023 to March of 2025. So almost 2 years worth of data in regards to calls for service and the connection to uses of force. But before we jump into that, I think it's very important to talk about what is force, what's defined as force for us, when can it be used, and what are the policies and laws that govern how we can use force. So, oh, he came back to the room. I told him I would not read from the slide. However,
Did he
I
just
am
read
going
from the
to
slide?
read from this slide. Okay, so what is force? It's defined by our policy section 300. It's the application of physical techniques, tactics, chemical agents, or weapons to another person. Understand that there is a catch to that. If somebody consents to being handcuffed being transported, being moved from one place to another, that's not considered a use of force. So when can we use force? So this is defined by California Post Use of Force Standards and Guidelines. It's to effect an arrest, a detention, to search someone, overcome resistance, prevent escape. If someone's committing a public offense in front of us, we can use force to arrest them if necessary. In defense of ourselves and others, and to gain compliance with a lawful order. So if we tell someone to do something and they're just sitting there and they're under arrest and they're just sitting there and sitting there and sitting there, not doing what we tell them, hey, stand up, turn around, hands behind your back, we can use some force to get them into a preparatory cuffing position and safely get them transported to jail. So what are the standards? We have case laws. There's 3 major case laws that really kind of govern what we do. We have California statutes that kind of play off of those. They're all interconnected. And then we have our policy section, which is section 300. There's a lot of rules and regulations. I'm going to go through some of those and talk about them. You're going to see a big list of things. The point of that is to show that we have a lot of things to consider anytime we put hands on someone or go to use force to effect an arrest. There's a lot of things to think about. So the first one is Graham versus Connor. It was a case in 1984. It was decided ultimately in 1989 by the Supreme Court. It establishes the reasonable standard, objective reasonableness standard. What that is, given the facts known to an officer at the time, would a similarly trained and experienced officer react in the same way? So that standard is set whenever we go to a situation and if force is used, it's objectively reasonable. There's 3 things to think about that came out of that case as well. The severity of the crime, the courts want us to consider that. We may handle a shoplifter from Rayleigh's different than someone that just committed assault with a deadly weapon, okay? Are they an immediate threat to us or are they an immediate threat to another person? Also, are they trying to resist or are they trying to evade? Those are things we have to think about. And that came out of Graham versus Connor. The next one's Tennessee versus Garner. It's a fleeing felon. We can't use deadly force just for someone fleeing a scene and they're a felon. To us, this sounds odd, but years ago, if somebody burglarized a home and they took off running, they could potentially use deadly force to effect an arrest or remedy that situation. This actually came off a 1974 case. Whenever a young man got shot after he burglarized a home, the officer shot him. The courts decided that is not appropriate. And then Hayes versus San Diego. Oh, I'm sorry, let me back up. So in Tennessee versus Garner, they also decided that any use of force falls under the 4th Amendment. So it's a search and seizure is what that falls under. And then also the totality of the circumstance is considered. So that standard of, hey, let's look at the whole picture. What happened before, after, just the whole circumstance, what led up to the force being used. So that standard came into play. And then in Graham versus Connor, I'll touch for a second. They said in Graham versus Connor that we can't judge an officer based on what we now know. In other words, let's not use the benefit of hindsight to judge what an officer can do. However, Hayes versus San Diego came into play, and that was ruled on by the Ninth Circuit, and that was in 2013. They started putting a standard of what did cops do before the call? What did they do during the call? What resources did they get in place? What tactics did they use? Were they calling for other resources that potentially could remedy the situation so a deadly force situation doesn't arise? So Graham versus Connor says we can't use hindsight. Hayes versus San Diego does say, hey, we will look at it and we may judge you on what you did or didn't do based on the outcome. So So it is almost the lens of a 2020 hindsight. And that's Hayes versus San Diego. I will read this as well. Law enforcement personnel's tactical conduct and decisions preceding the use of deadly force are relevant considerations under California law in determining whether the use of deadly force gives rise to negligence. So we can be judged for what we didn't do. PC 835, that's written in California law. It's Penal Code 835. It basically reiterates the case laws that we just talked about. So they are codified for us. Reasonable standard, totality of the circumstance, rather than the benefit of hindsight that is written into the penal code for state of California. And then, once again, they talk about totality of the circumstances in the 835 section. So we have to consider everything. So totality of the circumstances, a good example is that whenever we get a call for service, hey, there's a possible assault with a deadly weapon event that just occurred on the east or west side of town, whatever side of town it was. Prior to going there, officers will gain more information. Hey, we had a prior here 2 weeks before, and somebody was reported to have a firearm, and all of these things. We may approach that a little bit different than somebody that said, hey, shoplifter just left Rayleigh's and they appear to be 16 years old. You can understand totality of the circumstances. We're going to handle those calls a little bit different when we first get on scene to make sure we're safe, the public's safe, and we can investigate the case effectively. And then one thing that changed in 2020, I believe is the date on that they amended some 835 stuff. They codified shall not use deadly force against someone that is only a danger to themselves. So when I first started this career, that was about 17 years ago, if somebody was in a mental health crisis, we would kick a door in to go help this person. Okay, looking at it now, that makes no sense whatsoever. I have all of this tactical gear. I am now forcing myself into their house because I believe it's an exigent circumstance to help save their life. They're in crisis, and if they came at me with a knife, that could turn out poorly, very poorly, or try to assault me with a gun or something to that effect. That could turn out very bad. So we've changed our tactics a little bit in regards to people that are a danger only to themselves within their homes. We slow that down way more. We do not force ourselves into somebody's home if they are only a danger to themselves. Because if it turns out to where it potentially could be a deadly force situation, that is not what we want, okay? And so the legislator said, you shall not do that. You shall not force yourself into somebody's house and force that hand. So we'll do a lot of different things when somebody's in crisis, but that's one of the reasons that we kind of changed tactics. Government Code 7286, we shall use de-escalation techniques, crisis intervention tactics, and other alternatives. If there is any use of force that we think is unnecessary, we need to report it immediately, or we are going to be held liable as an officer. And then they made it into law that we promptly have to give people medical care. These are things that the South Lake Tahoe Police Department's been doing for a long time, but it's now written into law. Use of force reporting, it needs to be prompt, complete, and accurate. If somebody gets into a use of force, we're not holding that report and waiting 2 weeks to write that report. Pretty much within 24 hours, that report's going to be written. We have a lot of checks and balances. That report gets written, and a supervisor gets notified that a use of force occurred. A supervisor goes out and conducts a use of force interview. They speak to any witnesses. They identify any witnesses. They speak to the suspect that was arrested. They speak to the officers. They review all body camera footage. They review all the reports to make sure they are accurate. After they go through the frontline supervisor, then they go to the lieutenant. The lieutenant reviews all uses of force, Administrative Lieutenant Sintel. They go through him at this point. So there's a lot of checks and balances in place. When to report. If somebody has a visible injury from a use of force, if they state that they were injured from it, whether they have a visible injury or not. So if they're claiming injury, if they indicate that they are going to sue the officer or sue the agency or sue the city, we will conduct a use of force investigation. If taser was used, if anything other than handcuffs were used, then we will do a use of force investigation. So, the numbers. From May of 2023 to March 2025, 47,722 calls for service. It's a lot of calls for service. Out of those calls for service, there were 70 uses of force. As far as injuries, there were 34 suspects that were injured and 17 officers that were injured. 52 male subjects, 18 female. 49 were white, 17 Hispanic, 2 Asian, 2 other unknown. They refused to identify, and then 0 black. So, out of those 47,722 calls for service, only 0.15% ended up in a use of force. Numbers we just kind of touched on, 70% white, 24% Hispanic, 2% Asian. Actually, I do have a correction. That is 3%. Where the 2%, my math was off. It's not my strong suit. I apologize. I am a cop. 2% or 3% on Asian and 3% on other unknown. 26% female, 74% male. And what are the reasons? Why did we use force? Some of these, so this isn't not, I do know math well enough, this is not going to add up to 100%. Some of these overlap. 57% of the time, force was used to prevent escape. 80% was to effect an arrest. 80% was used to overcome resistance, 17% to protect self, 11% to protect others. So what did the officers do? We can't quantify everything that we do, but we broke them down to a few categories. 97% of the time, the officers use verbal commands. A lot of times what that looks like is stop, put your hands up, stop, get on the ground, stop fighting, turn around, you're under arrest, stop resisting. Those sort of things get thrown around. When they don't comply with that, we have to figure something else out. But verbal commands were given 97% of the time, 11% on taser. It says 0 on here. I should have said less than 1% because there was one impact weapons less lethal. Devices were used. 91% control holds and takedowns. So reading between the lines, what that means, 91% of the times, a lot of the times we're just grabbing them and it turns into a little bit of a wrestling match. Personal body weapons, 16%, that's hands, feet. Chemical agents, we had an incident, so it's less than 1%, and then none for the canines. Suspects' actions, 77% of the time, they were physically resisting or fleeing. 23% of the time, passive resistance. That's a scenario where they're just sitting there, hey, you're under arrest. They're not getting up, refusing to move. We may have to grab them, okay? In some of those situations, they say, hey, they hurt me. Ow, they hurt me. So we'll take a use of force report. Verbal resistance, aggression, 66% of the time. That would look something like, you're not touching me, I'm going to fight you, so on and so forth. So we will use force to get them under control. Serious injury. We had one serious injury, and that's almost over 2 years. 11 complaints of injury, 22 were minor, and 36 were no injuries. And then this kind of goes to the, most of the time it turns into us grabbing them. It turns into a bit of a wrestling match. So 65% of the time they received abrasions, 30% lacerations, blunt trauma, which a lot of times is using the hands and feet to get them under arrest, 17%, and then 0 broken bones. What questions do you have for
And
me?
Sergeant Lyles, 2 things can you talk about?
Yes.
Tennessee Gardner fleeing felon, when can we, when may that come into play? To stop a fleeing felon under the law, could we?
Yes, so,
And-
yes, sir.
The 835, shall not use, what, can you talk about Sierra Wellness for them a little bit?
Yes.
That new model.
Okay, so if there was a fleeing felon, and I don't want to get too graphic, but they just stabbed somebody, or just, they were shooting some active shooter type thing. They were shooting someone. They just shot 3 or 4 people on the side of the street and they took off running and they still had a gun in their hand. At that point, we could shoot a fleeing felon. Use deadly force. As far as, does that answer your question,
Yeah.
sir? And as far as Sierra Wellness, I'm not sure if you're aware that Sierra Wellness, have you presented that at all? So we have an outside entity that has come into the basin that is going to help with mental health calls. And so whenever someone is not presenting a threat to someone else, they're just upset and they're in a bit of a crisis and they potentially want to harm themselves only. They don't have a weapon. They just say they don't want to live anymore. Okay? It's a terrible thing, but do cops always need to be brought into that? Right? I think society has said, hey, sending a bunch of guys and gals with a bunch of weapons to go help someone in crisis doesn't always make sense. So Sierra Wellness is in the is a tool of ours now to where they will respond to those calls. So, for instance, we had one today. No one was in danger. They weren't a danger to anyone else. There were no weapons involved. They wanted to talk to someone. So at this point, we contact Sierra Wellness. They come out and they talk to that individual. They may potentially get placed on a what we call a 5150 hold, and they have the ability to do that without us being present. And so it offers another avenue for people in crisis without officers showing up and potentially it going sideways.
Can I add something to that real
for lack of a
fast?
better term.
One other thing, at least 2 of the members have heard extensively on stacks and things like that. The rest of you not yet, but you will at some point. The Sierra Wellness was sponsored through El Dorado County HHSA, Health and Human Services Agency. It's kind of a mandate for them. It's been taking them a couple of years to get it off the ground. It will still integrate with stacks and all of the other stuff we do. And I'm very, very supportive of the program, but that's through the county. And they're contracting out with that service. It's 24/7. So we're really excited, and that just started at the beginning of April or May.
The 3rd week of March.
Yeah, I was wrong on both. So 3rd week of March. Anyway, throw that in there since just that history with stacks, et cetera.
Well, thank you so much. And Sergeant Lyles, I believe this is your first time presenting in front of us. So Chief, thank you for getting more officers in front of us to get to know the department. I think use of force is an interesting topic, and that's probably where the Police Advisory Commission is kind of like some of the initial things to bring this is because that's a general community concern, right? And I think the first time we saw this presentation, I was really surprised in a good way of how low the stats are for the use of force, just because of the perceptions of law enforcement. And I'm someone who's very skeptical of use of force. So given, though, that use of force and has a certain perception in the community, I guess my question is, what do you all as a department do to help minimize that perception of the use of force? Because I think sometimes when and I wonder if other commission members would agree with this, we still hear about potentially excessive force by local officers, and unfortunately no one has felt comfortable to come talk about those things. So I guess my question to summarize is, what are you all doing to minimize, even with our small stats, the use of force overall, and what other efforts you are making to help the community understand how South Lake Tahoe PD uses force and when.
So for the officers, every training that we do in regards to potential use of force, we talk about de-escalation. And our officers, and if there's someone that has specific things, I would love to speak with them and give them an avenue to bring those to light, because we don't want officers using excessive force. So de-escalation's one of the main things. That is a focus of all of our trainings, and I see it on the streets. The other thing is the checks and balances that we have in place. If something comes up, we have a training committee that will immediately address that and start incorporating different ways to remedy whatever the officers are doing that's maybe incorrect. And so that's something that the lieutenant that reviews the uses of force, he's in charge of that committee, and he puts that into place. Also, the state within the last couple of years, SB2 is in place, and they can report directly to post-commission if there's a concern about officers' actions. So there's a lot of different ways for someone to file a complaint if they truly have one. I know that wasn't the question, but that is something that can happen and can help the community feel more comfortable. So it'll answer this part of it. They'll feel more comfortable if they have an avenue to complain, if you will, or file a complaint, if they don't have to come into and speak with an officer that they potentially have an issue with, or the agency they have an issue with.
Thank you. Anyone want to go? Go ahead.
When you mentioned de-escalation, I know some other local departments have CIT, the Crisis Intervention Training. Is that something that's offered in South Lake, or is the Sierra Wellness almost like an alternative to having the CIT team? And how is that working between the two?
So we have officers that are specific C&T officers, crisis negotiation officers. All of our officers receive some sort of de-escalation through their post-training every couple of years. We have the STACS program, but as far as a CIT group of officers that just go out, we do not.
That's kind of one of the, sorry.
So we have several officers that,
I'm sorry, if you're gonna speak, you have to have one of these.
We do have several officers who have been through the 40-hour California Post CIT course, and it's paid for by Post. So if I get a training request across my desk to go to that, I send them.
That's great.
I was just going to add that Officer Hazlett has been to a lot of those trainings. And when you talk about an actual team in the street, which was kind of the question, the Sierra Wellness hasn't necessarily replaced that, but it kind of has. That's the hope, is that's the starting point. He didn't mention, but they will come back to us if it's a situation they feel they can't handle, or they have a big long list, I won't bore you with all the details today, of intake paperwork and questions that they ask, and if it's something that's above what they can handle, they will send the call back to us. We'll evaluate if we're going to respond at all and or respond with them. So it kind of creates that team, but it can scale up or down depending on the situation. So I'm as the chief, I'm looking forward to seeing how this program plays out for us in this community, and I'm grateful that it's on the west slope and not just the east slope of the county. That was one of my things I wanted to make sure, I was hoping that would happen, and it did. So kudos to the county and HSH, I'm going to get their acronym wrong, Health and Human Services. It is not lost on us that they are here, so it's appreciated.
And then one other thing, within the last year, we've implemented a online training program. It's called the Briefing Room. And so part of our daily briefs is to watch these videos. A lot of them are geared toward tactics and de-escalation as well. That's something that these guys brought on board within the last year. We've had some very good success with it, great success stories. We had one scenario where it was a deadly force situation. A week later, we had almost the exact same scenario, No deadly force was used. The individual ultimately was tased, but no one was really hurt. And I will be honest with you, if we hadn't have watched that the week prior and we debriefed it for about 45 minutes, and we had a good game plan, and it worked out beautifully just 1 week later. So those sort of tools are extremely helpful, and I'm pretty certain we're going to continue forward with that. So that's a nice program that we currently have. Not to put you on the, not cutting it now, perfect. I really like it, so I'm glad we're not cutting it. Thank you, sir.
Officer Lyle, thank you very much for the presentation. Great background and statistics. Appreciate that. My question, I think you just answered, was, is this something you revisit with regularity? Your approaches and trainings around de-escalation with actual scenarios and kind of walking people through it and what's next, kind of a thing. So that sounds like it's happening quite a bit.
Yes. Yes, the answer is yes. We also, in our TASER program, within the last year, we transitioned to a different model. And we also got upgraded training tools to where we're now able to do live scenarios with our TASER, to where before, not a lot of volunteers to do live scenarios where they may or may not get tased. That is now an option. It's called a halt suit. It's Velcro based, and then we can equip the TASER to where it shoots out Velcro darts, so we can do actual scenarios that translate to real world experience, as opposed to going through a bunch of slides and go, hey guys, let's go shoot a static target. And we incorporate de-escalation in that, shoot, don't shoot type scenarios. So we're definitely upping our training game to be more decision based and not just static robotic.
They made me go through that just a couple months ago.
He did top of the class.
And I'll add real quick, we're a small agency. We're 42 sworn top down. Right now on patrol, like officer level on patrol, I think this sign up had 22 cops. It's impossible at our agency for someone to hide in the weeds, maybe doing stuff out there they shouldn't be doing. It's literally impossible. We would know if stuff's being done out there that is a little risque, if you will. It's not LAPD where there's 5,000 cops, 6,000 cops, and they could kind of get forgotten about out in the weeds. I'm going to know about it if something's going awry.
I guess the last question, you kind of already mentioned this, Chief, but how have you seen stacks with its implementation help reduce use of force? Or maybe there's no change, but...
I haven't done that analysis that specific.
That's great. Just Sergeant Lyles, if you don't mind saying again one more time, just for posterity purposes, how people can make complaints if they do feel there's use of force, because I still think that's kind of not well understood, or of how to do that within the community.
So on a local level, they can come into the department. They can ask to speak to the watch commander, and then file a formal complaint if they have a complaint. We have to take that complaint. If they choose to fill out a formal complaint, we will take that. I can email it to them. There's many different ways. I can mail it to them. But then there's also through the Post website. It's SB2. You can go through there and file a complaint against an officer. They have to be investigated. At the lowest level, if they want to call and talk to me about a specific case and they feel as if they weren't treated fairly, I can look up body camera. I can have an intelligent or somewhat educated conversation with them and maybe explain the tactics of why they were pulled out of a car, and they didn't like how they were pulled out of a car. Well, it was a stolen car. We've had that before. They're like, why was I pulled out of this car in the manner I was? Or they were ordered to come out of the car with their hands up. Well, the car was stolen. So we have no idea what we're walking up to. We'd prefer not to walk up to a stolen car. We would have them come out with their hands up and then put them in handcuffs and then figure out what we have. So there's those scenarios where maybe the use of force, they just don't understand the tactics of why we did it a certain way. And I feel that many of those phone calls, I've explained it. Sometimes on the other end, it's a person that knows they're a nice person and they're not trying to hurt us in any sort of way, but we don't know that. And until we can figure out what is going on and get the scene safe, the totality of the circumstances. We may be responding to a assault with a deadly weapon call. Somebody matches the exact description. We contact them. We put handcuffs on them. As an average citizen, if you did nothing wrong, you would be very frustrated. You got handcuffed and would say, well, that's excessive force. But as we talk it through, sometimes they go, oh, I didn't know that. I understand why I was put in handcuffs. And yes, they did release me immediately after we figured it out. So sometimes we can work through those problems just by a phone call.
I would also add that one of the reasons this commission was created, and just put it out there for the public, because this will be on TV, is certainly they could contact any one of the commissioners as well. So you guys all have city emails, and I would absolutely take a complaint from any of you as well.
Thank you so much. Justin? another-
Yep, thank you.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank you for your time. Thank you, sir.
Great. So open it up to public comment. Has anyone joined us on Zoom?
No, Chair, there are no members in the audience or on Zoom.
Okay, great. And then is there anything for us to discuss about this before we take it to council or report on it? I think what I'll share with the new commission members is use of force is definitely something that people have wanted to talk about. I'm glad we're having the presentation again. But if you have friends, family who have experienced that, really do encourage them to come forward either to one of us or other ones. It's hard. I would say that Chief Stevenson and I think the new upcoming chief will be very interested to hear about this. We're hearing very much that the officers are interested in hearing about bad apples as a whole, but I still think there's discomfort in coming to this commission and talking about it. So it's really hard for us to resolve these problems or try to come to conclusion of the problems if no one comes forward with them, right? And I know that police tactics on this area are ever evolving. And so the more that we know, the more that we can do in a community. This is a small force, we're a small community. So just encourage people to email you or contact you. And Chief is always happy to hear about those. Well, not happy to hear about them, willing to hear about those. So with that, I think we can move to the next topic, which is the annual report. It's a robust meeting today.
It is more than normal. Thank you again. I'll be presenting on this one. And again, I really appreciate Sergeant Lyles and Sergeant Trapini taking their time today, so it's not always me just talking at you. I just really appreciate their time, so thank you to them. So our annual report, originally I wanted to present this to the commission in February, but it just wasn't quite done. We missed it by a couple of weeks. So we did present it to the city council in March. However, I wanted to bring it back to you guys as well to let you know and a little bit deeper dive if anyone has any questions. It went through city council on consent. So just in a quick overview, notable events in 2024 for us, we did staff up that third administrator position that we got. Sergeant Lyles mentioned Lieutenant Doug Santel. We're so grateful for that, and he has been doing an outstanding job. She was here tonight, promotion of Sergeant Tracy Trapini. That occurred in 2024. We also promoted Sergeant Johnny Spaeth. He's actually started in January, but was promoted in December of last year. It was bittersweet as well, as we said goodbye to Sergeant Ross Molesworth after 23 years. He retired in December 2024. In addition to those mentioned, we had 11 other new hires. We hired 2 police officers, 2 dispatchers, 4 community service officers, 1 code compliance officer, 1 reserve police officer, and 1 intern throughout 2024. So we had a lot of activity on that front. One of our big purchase events for the year, when we're extremely appreciative for it, was that City Council approved a $980,000 5-year renewal contract with Axon. That's the body cameras that have been talked about. Again, our officers are extremely supportive of that program, and that's, they're not cheap, so it was a lot of money, and we appreciate the investment. It was touched on a little bit. Our dispatch center in just 1 year took in over 41,000 calls. There was, of that, over 9,000 911 calls. Compare year to year, compared to 2023, our overall calls for service dropped about 11%. So we were about 5,000 calls less than in 2023. In addition to that, our 911 calls were down about 16%. about 1,700 less 911 calls. However, our text to 911 calls did increase. I don't have the exact number. There were 624 text to 911 calls, which was an increase. So I think the community knows you can text 911 now when it goes into the dispatch center and pops up on the computer screen. So having said that, we had 24,097 total patrol calls for service. That was up from 21,000 the year before. So our calls for service went up 15%, even though our calls into dispatch went down. It was weird. In regard to major crimes, it was kind of a mixed match as it was the year before, although I'm not going to say it this way. Homicides, unfortunately, were up 100% because we had one, up from 0 the year before. Rapes were down, robbery was down. What was up was all assaults in general and thefts. So we did see an increase in those too. Our stop data, we had 3,776 stops. That would be the RIPA stop data that we have discussed to this commission before. Of all of our stops, 61% were white, 24% were Hispanic, and all other categories were 4% or less of those stops. And finally, I'll skip over the traffic collision data because that's nerd stuff that I'm into, but I don't know. There's a lot of collision data in our report if anyone's interested about times and days and how many crashes and primary collision factors. That's all in there. There's also a lot of great information about a detective division and all the things they've handled. Community service officers tends to get a lot of attention, at least in the public eye, and parking tickets and parking problems throughout the town. Our parking, between our parking ambassadors and our community service officers, they wrote over 9,600 tickets in 2024. There was 231 other citations, which would be things other than VHR or parking tickets. And they wrote 143 vacation home rental related citations. In total, they wrote just over 10,000 citations. That would be our community service officers and parking ambassadors, with a total of fines of just under $2 million. So they certainly have had an active year, and I know it's been in the press a lot lately, and obviously as we gear up for the possible return of vacation home rentals, et cetera, they're only going to get busier moving forward. So that concludes my presentation on our annual report.
The report was very colorful this year. So
Thank
credit to you all. Did you have any questions?
That's so awesome you said that. And
I've
You have no
noticed.
idea
I've
behind the
noticed the
scenes.
upgrade. Okay. Did you have any questions from council on this, or they just accepted it?
They just accepted it on consent. Yeah, there was no questions from council.
Last year was pulled, so. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, it was. Yeah, so that's it. So no public comment, or does that include your discussion?
Technically, I have to open it up for public comments. Do we have anyone?
Still 0 and 0.
And there are still 0.
I guess in terms of comments for us, I do hope next year we are able to see it before you report to council, just so
Yes,
we can report
and
on it
the very
too.
next item, we'll get more, a
Yeah.
little bit deeper dive into that, but it's built into our meeting schedule this year.
Yeah.
So that you guys will get it in October, which is the week before council. And I do appreciate you coming to council last year and reporting out for the commission.
Yes. But no, this is great, and I would encourage the commissioners to take a look at it and compare it to last year. It's just credit for your design upgrades. No, it's just, I think that having the stop data and the RIPID data in there is
I know
definitely.
that we're going to really make an effort as well. This is the 5th report, I believe. We're really trying to make it a report that is comparable year to year, just so you're aware. And as we work through some of our copisms and inability to use basic programs on computers and stuff, and as we get better help, we're certainly going to make that a goal.
Some of the change, it was a trial with a new program this year's.
Yeah.
So last year's was Publisher. I forget what program we used this year. So that's why it does have a little different look.
This wasn't a dig, it was just a notice and change. And I do think, because this was the first year we've had this much RIPA data, right? Or, I don't remember it from last year.
We did include the RIPID data last year, but I believe last year was the first year where we had the full year of data to report. So it should be comparable. I didn't dig into it that deep to look.
Great. Any other comments? Great. I guess that moves us on now to the meeting schedule.
Yeah, I will be presenting this one as well. So on February 12th, commissioners requested this item be brought back to have a discussion about the meeting schedule, including frequency and/or duration. Just as an overview, so you know where we're at, in 2025, we have 4 meetings scheduled for the Police Advisory Commission. We have scheduled quarterly meetings since it was created. This year, meeting dates were February 12th, today, May 7th. August 6th is our next meeting. And then, as I briefly mentioned before, October 29th will be our last meeting of the year, and that should be a week or two prior to all city commission annual reports are due by ordinance to the city council at their first meeting in November. So that annual report from the Police Advisory Commission, the goal would be that when that is presented at the October meeting, you guys could do that as a discussion item, and with the possibility of adding things, I'll make sure it gets worded, hopefully then he'll make sure it gets worded right where we can actually add written comments to the report itself. And then, as I already said it once, Chair Gonzalez, I really appreciate you showing up last year at that meeting and reporting out on behalf of the commission that prior to, it was heard. They noticed that you were there, so most of them. And then that's all I have. So I'll leave it to you folks if there's any questions, and then we'll public comment, and then you guys can discuss it.
I think the reason we want to come up is just to double check that this date, the Wednesdays were okay for everyone, if I recall correctly. Was that part of our February discussion? I don't
think
remember.
I vaguely
that was
remembered you
mentioned. Yeah.
thinking
Is
of
it
that.
still a good day? Is it still a good time? Is something that worked better because there's been a change of commissioners, you know,
Right. Or if you wanted to increase the number, decrease the number.
If we want to change it to slightly later, does that impact staff? Is there any information we have to get about that? Like, say we wanted to start at 4:30?
Well, you know,
It
it's,
doesn't affect me enough to worth complaining about. I mean, it's a half hour. We're normally working normal day shift stuff, and I defer to the city clerk. Cops
I
work
generally leave at
24/7.
4:30, but, but if you want to hold a nighttime police advisory commission meeting, we will do that.
We don't have to get like approval for budget or anything? 'Cause that's
No,
like
no, I'm
overtime.
salaried. It's
Oh.
fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Well, then I'll check in
And,
with
and it's only 4 times a year. I think I can handle it.
well, we want to respect your work-life balance as well.
That's okay. That's okay.
But to the commissioners, is there anything, time-wise, does this work for you? I know, just, you were running in, I ran in today too, so just so you know, you're not alone.
Okay, I'm fine with the time as is, but I can be flexible and work with the group.
This time is good for you.
It's the current time.
Yeah.
It works. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think if it works for everyone, I think we're good.
If you come in right at 4:00, we're totally fine with that.
Yeah,
Take your
I
time,
just
grab
don't like to be
water.
breathless in the middle of a meeting, but yeah, no, I just want, I think the big thing is to check in with the new commissioners too, to make sure that they can attend. And that looks pretty good, so,
And I'll just note for the record that there's no one attending in person or on Zoom to make public comment.
right. And if they did want to make public comment about a time that was better for them too, I think we would also hear that for next year and not within this quarterly schedule. So, I think the motion,
You don't need a motion.
we don't need, yeah, I'm just double checking. No motion needed on this one. So,
I'll note, Chair, that We do show the staff reports on this agenda, but usually there's a commissioner reports or request section. So I'm adding that in there right now so that you can add anything. That just accidentally did not make it onto the agenda, but it is implied.
You had the foresight, is one of my questions.
Yeah.
So with that, staff reports, do either one of you want to go first?
No, I don't have anything for the commission.
Sorry, I have two quick things. First, I appreciate Lieutenant Crivelli being here today. He's kind of being my extra set of eyes and ears. We are carrying over the item that you guys recommended on a presentation on SRO that is remembered by us. We have that. That will be coming back in August. And the biggest thing for me is that this is my last commission meeting. So the timing wasn't right to tell you guys that at the last meeting, but I really appreciate for those of you who've been, the two of you that have been here since the beginning, basically, yeah, I really appreciate it. I appreciate your professionalism, working through this process with me. It's been new for me, for our department, and I think the outcome has been really good. So I just appreciate that. I appreciate you guys, and I know that soon-to-be Chief Robertson will do an excellent job, and we'll carry on from there. So, yeah, that's it for me. So, thank you. That's it. That's all I had.
Great. I want to say, I think we can say on behalf of this commission that having you in this place has been great. You've been very open and transparent, and hearing the news of your departure was, for me personally, heartbreaking. But it's good for you to be retiring. And I tell people I wanted to retire from work the day I started, so I'm really jealous that you are. I will report back to the commission that I was able to participate in soon-to-be Chief Robertson. It's Robertson and not Roberson, right? I've heard it both.
It's Robber.
Robertson.
I would think of that.
Okay.
Robertson.
Interesting. I was able to participate in his interview on behalf of the commission, and I will say that I'm excited for him. He has been a lieutenant for the department for a long time, and from what I hear, the department is big fans of him too, and he's excited to participate in the commissions, from my understanding as well. So we look forward to meeting him and having him part of this commission.
And I should say the only reason he's not here today is because he had a pre-planned vacation and he's way out of state. So that's why he's not here.
Other things we can do at this portion, if you have anything that you want to add, and then we can talk about also adding things for the next agenda.
Just want to say thank you for what you've done for our community. I've only been on 2 of these meetings so far, but it's been a pleasure working with you, and I've only heard wonderful things about you talking to other service members and just general community members. So thank you.
Thank you.
I greatly appreciate your leadership here in this community. Your commitment to this community is been unwavering over the years, and you will be missed. You have big shoes to fill, and we wish you the very best in your retirement. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I'll just echo that. Thank you for all your service to the community. I've dealt with you in different facets throughout with Kiwanis and other words, and now on the committee, and you've always been very transparent, and that I've always respected, and we wish you well. And now that I know you're a DJ and may come out of retirement, we'll give you a call.
Thank you.
Oh, very heartbreaking. We do have to plan for the next meeting, though, so I hate going to business, but, well, let me ask you, do you have any ideas? I don't want to put new Chief Robertson in too much of a bind for the first meeting that he's transitioning into this position, but is there any recommendations that you have outside of the SRO to bring for August?
Have we done, we've done SB2?
We've done SB2 twice, I think,
Okay.
but it's 3/5 new.
We can dive a little deeper into Sierra Wellness if that is of interest, and how that whole process looks for us and the collaboration between us.
That's what was lingering in my mind as well, as a presentation on that. That would be 2 items. We've got the SRO presentation and then an update on Sierra Wellness / Stacks, maybe for a short name, because they are connected.
That was going to be my question, if whether it should
What was
be
that acronym, Chief?
Stacks.
Oh, stacks, sorry. I know what that
ask
is.
if that was like, would be a good joint presentation.
Does that sound good? Okay.
Does anyone want to make a motion to put that on the agenda for?
If just two of you agree, that's fine.
Okay.
That's all we need. We don't need a full motion.
Oh,
Or it can just be a consensus of the commission. Okay?
Nodding heads, that's good enough.
great. So I think we'll start off with those two agenda items for next time. And again, to the public, if you are interested in meeting the new chief and seeing him in action, please feel free to come and join our Zoom or the audience to participate in this. So thank you very much. And I think with that, we can adjourn. Great meeting, guys.
Thank you.